Hello and welcome everyone to the session on Azure Verifiable Credentials, the what, the why, and the how. So um, in terms of the agenda, we want to first level set on verifiable credentials and decentralized identities with a demo. In terms of how, we want to actually show you the sample that we have available on GitHub. We will explain how the sample works in detail. We will also go into way more details about the request API and some specific use cases there. So based on our research of about 3,000 US based companies, what we have come to know is that one of the biggest challenges in identity world today is customers getting identity verification done. Right. So when a new employee is onboarded, there are several trust ceremonies that happen as part of the onboarding process. He has to show the driver's license, maybe a citizenship certificate, the employment eligibility, you name it, a bunch of things. Sometimes it takes days, sometimes weeks to get employees onboarded. It gets even worse with contractors and customers. So but then we also find that the level of verification actually starts to go down as you try to access certain apps, or you try to do a self-service account recovery where you'll be asked, like, okay, which street were you born, where, or which street you grew up in, and so there's the essentially the bar for verification keeps going down. As we worked more with these companies, what we realized is that 82% of these organizations actually wish that there was a better way. When we say better in terms of safer, the first thing that comes to mind is that personal data breach, right? Avoiding personal data breach of any kind. Faster, right? When I think faster, the first thing that comes to mind is that custom integrations that it takes to kind of integrate between to call a new API or to integrate with a vendor website or a partner website. Easier when it what the top thing that comes to mind is the cost associated with, say, repeated verifications, right? Where you move from one website to another, you again have to enter a new set of username and passwords, again another new set of, even with SSO, you're still basically requiring some sort of custom integration. So can we do this better, right? So let me show you a quick demo of how verifiable credentials can make this onboarding experience better. We will start with I am going to switch over to the demo at this point. So on the screen, you can see that you're seeing on the left my Authenticator app on my mobile phone, and on the right, you're seeing that a website which potentially, as a new employee, you got it in an email from your HR department saying, Primal, can you go to this website and verify your identity so that we can kind of get you onboarded. Today in the physical world, you would go into the office, you would show your driver's license, you would show a bunch of other documents and kind of make do all the verification physically. In a remote world where you have to onboard remotely, this is the experience we are suggesting. So you enter your first name, last name at the website that your HR team provided you. That takes you to a request to actually go verify your identity with one of our ID verification providers. These ID verification providers have can attest different documents, and based on the documents, they can and in this case, you will see that there will be a couple of things that will be asked for, mainly a selfie and a government issued identity. And at that point, you can submit that information. In this case, our fictitious identity verification provider completed the verification. Maybe they match the picture, the selfie picture with the picture on my driver's license, and kind of made the match against the authorized issuers. Following that, I will get a QR code, which, as you can see, I can scan on my Authenticator app or my camera. And it'll ask me, this could be like a verification code that was sent to you in the same email where you were pointed to this website by your HR. And once you enter the PIN, you will have the ability to save your verified credentials on your phone. If you look at the credentials, you will see that it was document verified. Your driver's license was used for the verification, and your address, your name, and the different attributes are all part of this verifiable credential. At this point, you can return back to your employer's website. And what you will see that, you have successfully, you can confirm you're verified, and you are now able to access your personalized portal. So once you click on accessing your personalized portal, you will be requested to actually provide your verified identity that you had from True Identity. So you can see that, basically you will be asked for access to your verified identity. And once you provide that access, you can continue onboarding. This is one verification provider, but I'd like to take a pause here to kind of, let you guys know that we, through our current ID verification provider partner network, we can cover 192 countries and thousands of different attributes that can be verified for any user and be converted into a VC. So at this point, you can see that, I have onboarded in just a few minutes of providing, remote verification. And at this point, I also get the option to actually get an employee card, a digital employee card VC. And so I could scan it and and keep a copy of this card on my digital wallet, the Authenticator. Now, as you can imagine, any new employee would want to then go ahead and order some equipment. And so you would visit one of your vendor supplier websites. And there it gets an option to access discounts. It can at that point basically verify your employee credentials, and once you click verify employee credentials, it will ask you to basically confirm that you are indeed a WoodGrew employee. It'll ask you to select the right. I have two credentials right. You can see I have two credentials right now from one from my school and one from my employer. I'll select the employer credentials and give access. Once I have provided the access, you can see that that as an employee, I get the discounts offered from the vendor. So hopefully this gives you an idea and about the promise that was the promise that is made in terms of being secure, being the promise that of it being safer, wherein basically all the data is stored in your own wallet, so the data resides with the user faster. We had no custom integrations required at all, like setting up federation or any sort of SSO. Easier, definitely. The user has one credential that he's using across the different websites. You can imagine as a developer, right, that there are use cases like this where you need to allow access to, say, an expense tool only if you finished compliance training. You want to, say, federate with all the Fortune 500 or some 1,200 companies, and so that all your employees can collaborate with each other. How would you implement these scenarios today? right? Even the scenario that I just showed you, where you're getting employee discounts, but you never had to enter any username or password, right, to get your employee discounts. If you're allowed to buy alcohol if you're at least 21 years of age. So what we have done over the last year is we have these four customer stories that I specifically highlight. There are more on our website, but Keio University, one of the leading research universities, uses verifiable credentials to enable students to certify their enrollment, their transcripts, and graduate information from a smartphone. Before verifiable credentials, the students needed to keep the original copies and get them attested, or get them attested, or just provide original copies. The National Healthcare Service uses verifiable credentials to allow their healthcare staff to move from between organizations and store their own records of employment and clearance and credentials. The Flemish entrepreneurs at Flanders, basically they use verifiable credentials to provide proof of age and minimum legal capital, so that they can accelerate their business approvals from regulatory government agencies. RMIT, a technology leader in this space of verifiable in the educational space, is using verifiable credentials to get student discounts, convey transcripts, from universities to prospective employers, and to provide the university security and compliance training. Has been, compliance training has been successfully completed, right? So several different scenarios we have already seen. Also, you can see that we are definitely looking for developers to build more custom solutions with wide range of use cases, and you can check out our hackathon that was recently done, where several such use cases were brought to fruition. So in terms of like how do these things really work now behind the scenes? So what I showed you, right, when we talk about decentralized identities, what we are talking about is a globally unique identifier. But you would say, okay, we have several globally unique identifiers like DNS records, like URLs, like certificates, and so it's like, what's different with decentralized identifiers? So for example, take a DNS record. The DNS record is actually set up in a DNS server, right? And so you have a central authority or a central server farm of servers that actually manages that. Similarly, even if you take identity, right? Identity, you could have identity being managed by Azure AD, by Okta, by Ping, but they basically own the identity. And if one of those things goes down, then basically, that impacts your identity experience. With decentralized identities, there is no central registration authority, right? The information is written to a decentralized system, and so basically, your reliability increases substantially there. So that's about decentralized identities. Verifiable credentials, as you can see on the screen, we are showing a verifiable credential that was issued by an employer. So it's represented by a DID. The employer is represented by the DID. The subject, right, which is the person to whom the verifiable credential is assigned. Now you would say, why verifiable credentials, right? Today we are surrounded by different credentials, right? We have driver's licenses, we have passports, we have employee cards. So those are all physical credentials, and credentials are essentially a set of claims, right, that an issuer makes for a subject. With verifiable credentials, though, what you get is, it's something that does not require physical presence, but at the same time, it is cryptographically verifiable. It is privacy preserving because you own the credentials, and then last but not the least, it's machine verifiable, right? So all those three are kind of the differentiating factors for verifiable credentials compared to, say, your physical credentials. And privacy preserving is the key difference when you compare it to claims that you get in the current manner. So what you're seeing on the screen is that a verifiable credential has the issuer, the subject, and then the claims, right? In this case, the title and the tenure. These verifiable credentials are then signed by the private key of the issuer, in this case, Woodgroove. And what Woodgroove does is it puts information about itself, like the DID document that we say associated with its DID, that stores the public key, right? With which the public key, which matches with the private key that was, which is the equivalent of the, which is the match of the private key with which the verifiable credential is signed. So now the user can accept these credentials onto their wallet, and basically, the storage of the data of the claims is only with the user, right? And it's not that some admin is, configuring the claims on the server side and you're getting it. No, these claims reside with you on your wallet. Let's say another partner company, right, like Fabricam, wants to verify that you are indeed an employee of Woodgroove. It at that point can request these verifiable credentials to be presented to it, and the user will present those credentials over. But while doing that, it would even encrypt it again with the private key of the issuers DID, right? So now the credentials that are presented to Fabricam are encrypted with two private keys. What Fabricam needs to do is actually retrieve the public keys from the from the decentralized system, and then use first the key from the user and then the key from the issuer to make sure that the issuer is who it is and the user is who he claims to be, right? So like on the subject matches the DID that's supposed to be there. So basically, this is very similar to a bank account system, right? Where you go to a bank locker and you cannot open the locker until you have two keys, one from the bank and one which you own. So you need both the keys to unlock your locker. So kind of you can think of it that way. So it's highly secured. So the key point we want to make with this slide is that we are based on open standards, right? So basically, the verifiable credentials and decentralized identities that we talked to you about, they are W3C standard. Some of the other standards listed over here are still in Decentralized Identity Foundation standard, and basically, we are contributing to these standards and implementing these standards so that we can interoperate with other companies and other vendors in this space. The user agent, we have our own implementation in the authenticator based on the standards. The universal resolver, you can think of it like a DNS resolver where the DID is getting resolved to the DID document and then to the public key. The identity hub provides a way to, you can have multiple identity hubs in your verifiable credentials, and they provide a way to store data about which you control, right? Who gets access to and when. And then OpenID Connect SIOP basically is, we are building on top of OpenID Connect, which 95% of applications on the internet are using. And we believe that, kind of using that mechanism with verifiable credentials provides us a way to interoperate with existing systems. So that's all with that. Then, yeah, a huge call out to our partners. Basically, with these partners, we are covering 192 countries, 6,000 identity documents, and thousands of organizational attributes, millions of individual attributes. And then we definitely have decades of experience going with our system integrator partners. So definite great call out to them. In terms of, we've talked a lot about this technology and what it is. Like, how does Microsoft democratize this technology and make it available to the developers, right? So that they don't have to know about the different standards. They don't have to know about the intricacies of, how a decentralized system works. We have three parts to our solution, right? First is the Azure Id Portal, where you can configure the look and feel, right, of the credential that I was showing you. And you can also set rules on how the credentials will be issued. Then there is the end user wallet, the Microsoft Authenticator that we talked about, where it's the control plane. We've always mentioned Azure AD as a control plane, and in this case, Authenticator can play that role where the Authenticator is the control plane, and it helps you decide who do you want to share your credentials with, and when do you want to share it, basically. So and then in terms of the developer tools, which is the part that we will go way into the depth with in this session, is the request API that we call, where we provide an API to issue verifiable credentials and also verify the credentials. So we'll go into way more depth into that portion in this session. So with our API, right, what's our real goal, right? So the key goal here is, obviously, as I said, we want to democratize the whole concept of verifiable credentials and kind of help the developers build applications, right, that can issue and verify credentials from any programming language of choice, right, whether it's .NET, it's Node, whether it's JavaScript, your choice. And we want to hide all the complexities of the protocol and the internal workings. So let me switch over to my demo. So what you can see on the screen here is, when we run the sample, you will see two options, right, in our published sample. And when you run the sample, you will see that you will get an option to get credential and verify credential. This is exactly what I showed you in the demo, but in this case, we will go behind the code. And this is actually code running on my machine right now. As you can see, the .NET sample that's running right now and will be receiving the requests. So let's click get credential. And you can see the code that we have running. And then I can show you that I bring my phone next to this so that you can see. So that's my phone. And you can see that, once I scan the credentials and I provide the PIN, I'm able to get the credentials in. Similarly, you can see that the credentials can be verified. And when I give the verify option, it will go call the request API behind. And if I scan this, just like I did in the demo, I will be asked to kind of, allow access to my credential that was just issued. You can see. And once I allow that, you will see that all the claims from that credential are now available. The last name, first name, the domain. So you can see you can see. Cool. So that's quickly showing you that. Let's run and look at the actual code behind. Actually, let me give you a little bit of the flow before I take you inside the code. So the high-level working of this sample, right? It's a website that is powered by ASP.NET Core Web App, and it basically has two options, right? It can issue a credential and it can verify. So when it issues, it shows a QR code, and the JavaScript actually polls the web app to see if there are any status changes from the authenticator. And the minute the authenticator scans the code, you will actually see the updated response on the website. And then when it is completed, you will see the successful response. Similar thing we use with the verification side as well, right? And so let me what I would love to do now is first actually show you like what happens behind the scenes, right? So what happens is So you can see over here, right, that we first go to the issuer website, right? And then from there, we click Get Credentials when we actually call the API called issuance request in our sample. And so you can see that it returns, it comes back with a response, like, you can see the OpenID response. This is one that gets converted into, say, sorry, yeah. So this one comes back with the request that we need to go, comes back with the built request that we need to go to. And then this request is going to our VC service. You can see that. If you look at kind of the JSON, you will see all the different parameters that are being passed on, like the issuance callback, the API key, the state, the claims, and the PIN, right? And then what the service returns back is an OpenID VC request URI, which gets converted to the QR code. And then this is the request that is made from Authenticator, to which in response it gets the VC card. And the VC card essentially is, it's a JOT, and then you can, we'll go into the decoding of that JOT and the details over there. But you can see that, we continue polling the service. We continue polling to see if, the Authenticator app has retrieved the QR code, and you can see that eventually you'll see that the request was retrieved and then issuance was successful, right? Similarly, when we call the verifier, we are calling the API that we have within our web app, the presentation request, and then it basically leads us to the request that we need to make to the service. And you can see again the parameters over here of what we have requested, the accepted issuers, the purpose that we are requesting the credential, and then basically if we can decide whether to include the receipt or not, and then the state, the callback, and also the API keys, right? So which helps you kind of correlate the request to response. And then you can see again we poll to make sure that is the authenticator presented the and you can see over here that eventually the presentation was verified, and we got the response back to our website saying the authenticator has provided the presentation, right? So now, having looked at the actual demo, the fiddler behind it, now let's jump into the code a bit. As you can see, this is an ASP.NET Web App, project, and there are two key controllers in here: the issuance controller and the verification controller. And you can see in the code, like as we went, we did the issuance request. We call the issuance request API, and this API is essentially setting up the entire request and is using the JSON that we have for the request. You can find the JSON over here in issuance request config, and then basically you can see that we have this set as a callback. This particular code is a is the callback, and you can see that the timer for that callback is set to about 1.5 seconds, as we were seeing in the fiddler trace. Every 1.5 seconds, in the issuance callback, you will see every 1.5 seconds we are making the issuance callback and getting, checking the status of what's happening on the authenticator. The issuance response, we are just validating, that the response is a 200 okay. And then what I can even take you to a little bit. You can see what this sample does require is that you have these app settings configured in your portal. So it needs your tenant ID, client ID, and we have a YouTube video that will set you up through the entire issuance process, or the entire setup process. And then you can also see you can look at the verifier controller, and you'll see there that we have the presentation request API, which I was showing you in Fiddler, and that is building the presentation request for, and you can see, as we saw in the accepted issuers, are set up over there. What else? What else? I can show you the presentation callback, which we will verify that you have basically you have scanned the QR code, and we are checking this every 1.5 seconds. So basically this is the controller, and then we can look at the actual JavaScript, where you will find the that we are calling this we're setting the interval for checking the status, and you can see that the status is set to 1500, so that and you can change this interval as you find correct, but it is set at 1.5 seconds today. And then so that's about it, right? In terms of what we are doing from JavaScript, we are calling the actual controller, and then the controller is actually building the request. And you can see that we are kind of continuously polling for the response. So that's about it from the JavaScript. And last thing I want to touch up is that if you are if you really want to kind of just explore a little bit more on the API itself, then you also have the option to actually run these APIs in Postman. And we have these Postman collections available on our GitHub too. I can actually get a quick access token and basically use the token to call the same issuance APIs that we were calling through the sample. And you can see over here, we have the state, the API key to correlate, and then obviously the authority ID from which we want the credential, the manifest that gets configured in the portal, and the PIN and the claims, right? So I can send this request out. And just like I would do it, for the demo, I can scan this. I can scan this using my app, and similarly, I can also, do the presentation portion the exact same way. So hopefully, this helps you see all the different ways that on the development side, how you can use the samples, how you can code the samples, and also in the current sample, leverage the samples to build your own use cases. So just to wrap up, this is one of our calls to action here, that we are looking for folks to participate in our preview program. We will be working very closely with you to build your business use case, and you'll have full access to our expertise from the engineering team. But we are looking for obviously the business use case, but also a commitment of half a day or a day of your developer or technical architect to kind of get this proof of concept going for your use case. So that's the link to the form there. If you want to, if you can fill it up, just reach out to me directly, and we can start talking about what we can do as a proof of concept. Thank you all.